Sagittarius. Only 3 signs can truly touch Sagittarius's soul. Sagittarius, have you ever noticed how you can be surrounded by people, laughter, conversation, even admiration, and yet there is a quiet ache that refuses to leave you? A subtle emptiness beneath your smile. A feeling that something essential inside you remains untouched. You give so much of yourself, your warmth, your humor, your wisdom born from a lifetime of exploration, and people adore you for it. But adoration has never been the same as understanding, has it? And sometimes, in the middle of all the brightness you radiate, you feel an isolation so deep it almost startles you. At this stage of your life, between 45 and 54, your Sagittarius fire has matured into something wiser, softer, more discerning. The world sees your confidence, your adventurous spirit, your independence, but very few see the tenderness beneath it. Very few sense the quiet longing for a connection that meets you at the depth where your truth lives. Because no matter how bold or free you appear, there is a secret part of your soul, sacred, vulnerable, unguarded, that rarely feels met. But what if I told you that this loneliness has a reason? That you were never meant to be understood by everyone? That only 3 kinds of souls in the entire zodiac carry the emotional key capable of unlocking the place you keep most protected? If what you're feeling resonates deeply, allow yourself to gently like, share, or subscribe, not out of obligation, but as a way of saying, yes, this message is for me. Gate 1. The hidden loneliness of the Sagittarius woman. There is a loneliness that follows a Sagittarius woman throughout her life, but it becomes especially pronounced between the ages of 45 and 54, when your inner world grows richer and more complex than most people around you can comprehend. It's a loneliness that doesn't come from lack of company. In fact, Sagittarius is rarely alone. You attract people easily. You make others feel comfortable, inspired, lifted, entertained, sometimes even healed just by being yourself. But underneath the laughter, the natural magnetism, and the openness you show the world, there is a deeper layer of your heart that very few have ever touched. And that untouched part is where the loneliness lives. People see your smile and think you're fine. They hear your optimism and assume you never struggle. They watch you navigate life with resilience and believe you don't need anyone. And for most of your life, you played along with that narrative because it felt easier than explaining the truth, that your independence is not a sign of invulnerability, but a response to the number of times people have failed to meet you where your soul truly resides. So you learn to keep your emotional world wide and open but not deep. You learn to give generously while rarely expecting anyone to understand the complexity inside you. And over time that created a quiet ache, a longing your spirit never quite outgrew. Sagittarius is the sign of expansion, but emotional expansion requires companions who can travel those inner distances with you. As you matured, your inner world didn't shrink, it grew. Your wisdom grew. Your sensitivity grew. Your needs for depth, truth, and emotional reciprocity grew. Yet the people around you didn't always grow in the same direction or at the same pace. And so you found yourself surrounded by individuals who loved the light you gave off, but didn't know how to sit with you in the dark. People who adored your fire but were uncomfortable with your shadows. People who enjoyed your storytelling but couldn't hold your silence. People who valued your strength but didn't know what to do with your fragility. This is why, even in a room full of friends, you sometimes feel a subtle emptiness in your chest. It's why certain conversations feel bright but not nourishing. It's why relationships that look stable from the outside feel strangely incomplete. It's why you can be physically present and emotionally separate at the same time. You don't lack connection. You lack resonance. You lack someone who sees behind the brightness into the quiet corners of your being. The truth is, Sagittarius women are rarely understood on the first layer. Your outer nature, warm, humorous, adventurous, philosophical, is what people see first. But your inner nature is entirely different. It is tender. It is hopeful in ways that make you vulnerable. It is intuitive to a degree that surprises even you. It is profoundly spiritual, often experiencing life through meaning rather than logic. And while many admire you, very few can meet you on that deeper wavelength because that requires emotional courage, self-awareness, and a kind of authenticity most people are not ready to embody. Over the years, this disconnect has shaped you more than you admit. It's why you've learned to withhold your deeper thoughts. It's why you've learned to cry in private. It's why you rarely talk about the fears that keep you up at night. You express fragments of your truth but save the whole truth for yourself. You have lived a lifetime mastering the art of being open but not exposed. And people mistake that balance for self-sufficiency. They don't see that you long for someone who understands without you having to translate. Someone who senses the subtle shifts in your energy. Someone who can hold space for the parts of you that don't always know how to be brave. At midlife, this hunger becomes stronger because Jupiter's influence deepens your need for meaning. You stop tolerating shallow dynamics. You stop accepting half-hearted presence. You stop pretending that surface-level affection satisfies you. Something inside you begins to crave a connection where you can finally put down your emotional armor and just be. Not the wise one. Not the strong one. Not the entertaining one. Just you. Your heart wants to be met. Your soul wants to be recognized. Your spirit wants companionship, not an audience. And yet, you've noticed that when you let someone close, they often misunderstand the real you. They enjoy your stories but not your silence. They love your strength but withdraw when you show your fear. They encourage your dreams but panic when you reveal your wounds. They say they want depth but get overwhelmed by the emotional honesty that depth requires. And each time this happens, a small part of you tucks itself further inward, retreating into a space that feels safe but lonely. This loneliness is not a flaw. It is the natural consequence of having a soul that has evolved faster, deeper, and wider than most. Sagittarius is born with a spiritual hunger that many never understand. You want truth, not flattery. You want authenticity, not performance. You want connection, not convenience. You want a love that doesn't suffocate you but doesn't leave you stranded either. You want a companion on your inner journey, not just on your outer adventures. And this is why your loneliness deepens with age, not because your heart grows weaker, but because it grows wiser. You begin to see clearly which relationships lack the depth you crave. You begin to sense energetically who is meant to walk beside you and who cannot. You begin to realize that your soul is not accessible to just anyone. And perhaps for the first time, instead of blaming yourself for being too much, you begin to understand the truth. Only a rare type of person can meet a Sagittarius woman at the depth where her soul truly lives. This is where the revelation begins. The loneliness you feel is not random. It is a compass. It is your soul whispering that only 3 kinds of souls, 3 specific signatures in the entire zodiac, have the capacity, the emotional courage, and the spiritual readiness to truly touch you, understand you, and meet you where you have always longed to be met. And when these souls appear, everything changes. Gate 2. Why most people can't reach you. The Sagittarius frequency. There is a reason, Sagittarius, why you have spent so many years feeling like others can only access small fragments of you. A reason why you can connect with almost anyone on the surface. Share laughter, stories, ideas. Yet when it comes to emotional depth, very few can follow you past the first layer. Most people only ever meet your brightness. They hear your wisdom, admire your independence, rely on your optimism, and love the way you always bring hope into a room. But they don't realize that beneath that brightness lies a profound emotional world that requires a different kind of courage to enter. A courage most people never cultivate. You have always existed on a frequency that does not match the world around you. It is not higher or lower, it is simply wider. Your spirit is wired to take big leaps, explore inner terrains, question beliefs, examine the meaning behind everything you feel. But most people live in small spaces within themselves. They prefer certainty to exploration, predictability to depth, comfort to truth. They want connection, yes, but they want it on terms that keep their own hearts protected. And that is where your frequency becomes too expansive for them, because to connect with you fully is to face themselves fully. It requires emotional honesty. It requires vulnerability. It requires a willingness to sit in discomfort, to ask difficult questions, to unclench the heart long enough to let truth flow. And while you are naturally built for this kind of journey, many are not. For most of your life, you assumed the disconnection was your fault. You thought maybe you were too intense, too philosophical, too emotional, too independent, too complicated. You wondered if your desire for real conversation, real presence, real intimacy made you demanding. You questioned whether your need to be understood deeply was unreasonable. You let people convince you that you think too much, or you feel too much, or you want too much. But the truth is simpler and far more compassionate. You are tuned into a frequency that the majority of people do not know how to access. Think of the times you tried to express something meaningful. An inner fear, a sudden insight, a spiritual shift, and the other person responded with confusion, impatience, or a need to simplify what you were saying. Their inability to understand you wasn't a sign that you were incomprehensible. It was a sign that they were only capable of hearing you from the surface level where they themselves live. Your emotional honesty made them uncomfortable, because it exposed the shallow waters they've grown used to swimming in. It's like trying to discuss the ocean with someone who has only ever stood at the shore. The older you get, the more painfully obvious this becomes. In your 20s, you tolerated shallow connections because everything felt like an adventure. In your 30s, you filled the emptiness with activity, ambition, purpose, exploration. But in your mid-40s and beyond, your soul becomes quieter, and at the same time hungrier. You stop being impressed by superficial bonds. You stop accepting relationships built on convenience rather than truth. You stop wasting emotional currency on people who don't have the depth to reciprocate. And as your standards rise, the pool of people who can truly touch you becomes even smaller. This is not because you are hard to love. It is because you require a quality of love that demands emotional maturity, self-awareness, and authenticity. And this level of connection cannot be forced or manufactured. It requires the right kind of soul. Sagittarius women in midlife have an emotional architecture that is intricate. You are both strong and sensitive, both independent and deeply longing for companionship, both fierce and fragile. And most people can only meet you on one side of that spectrum. They either admire your strength but shrink from your vulnerability, or they enjoy your softness but cannot handle your fire. But meeting you at the level of your soul requires embracing all parts of you at once. Few people can do that. The world has taught them how to love partially, not wholly. There is also the element of truth. Sagittarius is the seeker of truth, not the performer of pleasantries. You cannot tolerate relationships where masks are worn, emotions are hidden, or words are filtered for comfort instead of honesty. But people often cling to illusions to protect themselves. They fear the kind of transparency that comes naturally to you. They fear being seen too clearly. They fear exposing their wounds. And connecting with a Sagittarius woman means that their emotional camouflage will eventually fall apart. Not because you tear it down, but because your presence makes hiding impossible. The way you speak, the way you intuit, the way you feel. Everything about you invites truth. And truth terrifies those who haven't made peace with their own shadows. Another reason most people cannot reach you is your spiritual depth. Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, the planet of expansion, of meaning, of wisdom gained through experience. Your spirit doesn't merely want companionship, it wants inner growth. Every connection becomes a journey for you. You don't want someone to walk beside you in silence. You want someone who can walk beside you with awareness. Someone who shares the same hunger for growth, the same desire to evolve, the same willingness to examine their patterns. But many people fear introspection. They fear the unknown territory of the soul. They fear change. And so they stay on emotional autopilot while you continue expanding. As a result, you often find yourself too much for some and not enough for others. Too intense for those who prefer comfort over truth. Too free for those who prefer certainty. Too emotional for those who never learn to feel. Too honest for those who rely on illusion. Too deep for those who live on the surface. But none of this means you are mismatched with the world, it means you are rare. It means your soul is selective by design. And here is something important. The loneliness you feel is not a signal of failure. It is a sign of discernment. It is your spirit refusing to settle. It is your intuition rejecting people who cannot walk with you at the pace and depth your soul requires. Because when the right souls appear, the ones who can truly meet you, you will recognize them instantly. Not by their words, not by their charm, but by how your energy responds to them. Your heart will unclench. Your spirit will soften. Your mind will relax. You will feel a sense of recognition, as if your soul is saying, finally. Only 3 kinds of energies in the zodiac can meet you on this level. 3 signs whose emotional blueprint resonates with your own, whose depth matches your depth, whose courage matches your courage, whose truth complements your truth. And once you understand who those signs are, everything about your connections, past, present, and future, will begin to make perfect sense. Gate 3. The first sign that can truly touch Sagittarius's soul. Gemini. There is a kind of recognition that happens between Sagittarius and Gemini that defies logic. Before a single word is exchanged, there is already a spark, an invisible bridge forming between two minds that seem to move with the same rhythm, the same curiosity, the same hunger for meaning. Gemini is your opposite on the zodiac wheel, Sagittarius, and this opposition creates a sacred kind of magic. Where others misunderstand your depth as complexity, Gemini celebrates it. Where others find your restlessness too much to handle, Gemini finds it familiar. Where others ask you to be simpler, Gemini asks you to be even more you. This is the first sign that can reach the deepest layers of your soul, and the reason is simple. Gemini meets you at the level of your mind, and your mind is where your spirit begins. You have spent so much of your life feeling like people only connect to fragments of you. Some connect to your humor, others to your strength, others to your warmth. But Gemini connects to your essence, your thoughts, your truth-seeking nature, your inner fire of understanding. They don't want the performance, the facade, the curated version of you that the world consumes so easily. They want your mind in its raw, untamed, unfiltered form. And for a Sagittarius woman, especially in midlife when your inner world has become profoundly rich, this type of connection is beyond rare. It's liberating. When a Gemini enters your life with emotional maturity, something awakens inside you. Your thoughts come alive. Your spirit feels lighter. Your sense of wonder, which the world sometimes dulls, reignites with full force. You find yourself thinking more, exploring more, feeling more alive simply because their presence activates parts of your soul that have been asleep for years. It's not romantic attraction, it's recognition. It's the soul remembering something it had forgotten. I'm not alone on this wavelength after all. Imagine a conversation where you don't have to explain the layers behind your words, where someone understands the meaning beneath the meaning, where your metaphors don't confuse them but inspire them. Gemini doesn't just listen to you. They dance with your thoughts. They challenge your ideas, not to dominate you but to help you expand. They ask questions that make your heart open rather than close. They help you process feelings you weren't even aware you were holding. Where others misunderstand your introspection, Gemini gently pulls it forward and says, "Tell me more." And it isn't just the mental stimulation that makes Gemini special. It's the emotional spaciousness they create. Gemini does not cage you. They do not rush you. They do not try to mold you into something more acceptable. If anything, they open the windows of your inner world wider. They give you room to breathe. They encourage the parts of you that life has tried to quiet. They celebrate the pieces of you that others have criticized for being too much. And for a Sagittarius woman, who has spent years learning how to be strong even when tired, this kind of emotional freedom is transformative. Gemini also sees the version of you that hides behind humor. You have always used laughter and optimism to cope with pain, to hide your exhaustion, to protect your heart from being overwhelmed. Most people think your laughter means you're okay. But Gemini hears the emotion behind the laughter. They notice the subtle cracks in your tone. They sense the heaviness you don't speak aloud. They pick up on your shifts in energy before you consciously recognize them. And instead of pulling away, they lean closer. They ask gentle questions. They sit with your silence. They make you feel like you don't need to pretend you're unbreakable. Gemini gives you a gift few others can. The gift of being understood without having to simplify yourself. And for Sagittarius, whose complexity is often misinterpreted, being understood in this way feels like relief. A profound, long-awaited relief. Yet there is another layer of this connection, a deeper, more spiritual layer. Gemini mirrors the part of you that still seeks. The part that asks questions at midnight. The part that wants to grow even when you're tired. The part that refuses to become stagnant, even when life becomes heavy. Gemini helps you see yourself more clearly because they explore the world the same way you do, with openness, curiosity, and an endless desire to learn. When you talk to them, it's like your inner fire has company. You don't burn alone. And while the bond with Gemini can be light, playful, and mentally energizing, it can also be profoundly healing. You begin to feel that you don't have to carry your inner world entirely by yourself. You don't have to silence your fears or hide your vulnerabilities to be loved. Gemini won't judge your contradictions. They'll explore them with you. They won't fear your emotional truths. They'll hold space for them. and they won't ever ask you to dim your curiosity or your depth. If anything, they'll encourage you to go deeper. But it's important to acknowledge something. Not every Gemini can reach you this way. It must be a Gemini who has done their inner work, grown emotionally, learned to stay present, and developed the ability to listen deeply. An immature Gemini will be inconsistent, scattered, unreliable, and emotionally unavailable. They will stimulate your mind but deplete your heart. They will open doors but fail to stand beside you as you walk through them. They will excite you but not ground you. And that version of Gemini cannot touch your soul. They can only touch your attention. The Gemini who can reach you at soul level is different. They are anchored. They are conscious. They take responsibility for their truth. They understand emotional nuance. They bring curiosity rather than chaos. They offer presence rather than unpredictability. They match your fire with air that nourishes, not air that disperses. And when you meet this kind of Gemini, something inside you softens in a way you cannot control. You feel seen. You feel safe. You feel inspired. You feel understood in a way that makes you breathe differently. This connection is not about dependence. It's about resonance. The two of you mirror each other's minds, challenge each other's perspectives, and help each other grow. Not by force but by alignment. Gemini touches your soul because they can meet you at the pace of your spirit. They can travel with you across mental landscapes most people have never dared to enter. And because of that, they awaken a part of you that you thought had gone quiet with time. When a Gemini touches your soul, Sagittarius, it's like remembering your own light. The one that flickers beneath the surface. The one the world doesn't always see. The one that deserves to be met with curiosity, tenderness, and truth. Gate 4. The second sign that can truly touch Sagittarius's soul. Aries. There is something unmistakable about the way an Aries meets you, Sagittarius. It isn't subtle. It isn't hesitant. It isn't softened to make you comfortable. Aries arrives with a kind of energy that is both grounding and electrifying, as if they are saying without words, I see all of you and I'm not afraid. And for a woman like you, someone who has carried strength for decades, someone who has learned to stand tall even when exhausted, this presence is nothing short of transformative. Aries is the only sign that looks at your fire and doesn't flinch. They don't try to manage it. They don't try to tame it. They simply step into it with you. What makes Aries able to touch your soul is not their boldness, though you admire it. It is not their confidence, though it resonates with you. What reaches you is their ability to see through the quiet, unspoken fatigue that you hide beneath your independence. They recognize the weight you carry without needing you to list every burden. Aries understands the particular exhaustion that comes from always being the one to stay hopeful, always being the one to rise again, always being the one who refuses to lose heart. They recognize it because they know what it feels like to fight battles in silence. And so instead of asking you to be strong, Aries offers you something rare. A place where you don't have to be. You spend so much of your life being the motivator, the encourager, the light bringer, the one others rely on. You inspire people without effort, uplift them without reward, give them courage simply by being yourself. But who inspires you? Who lifts you? Who sees the parts of you that feel tired, discouraged, or overwhelmed? Aries does. They see the warrior in you, but they also see the weary traveler who just wants to rest. They see your boldness, but they also see the moments where your courage feels stretched thin. And instead of stepping back, they step closer. They don't mistake your strength for invulnerability. They don't misinterpret your independence as a refusal to be supported. Aries knows that even strong souls need places where they can collapse softly. Aries also touches your soul because they match your honesty. Sagittarius truth is philosophical, expansive, and compassionate. Aries truth is direct, immediate, and unfiltered. When you combine the two, something extraordinary happens. You are able to be honest with yourself in ways you forgot were possible. Aries isn't intimidated by your emotional intensity or your desire to question everything. They don't panic when you express doubt. They don't retreat when you reveal fears. Instead, they challenge you, not with cruelty, not with ego, but with genuine care. Their confrontations aren't attacks. They are invitations. Invitations to see yourself more clearly. Invitations to stop running from what hurts. Invitations to honor your needs instead of sacrificing them for others. With Aries, your defenses soften not because you trust easily, but because their authenticity disarms you. And there is something deeply healing about the way Aries shows loyalty. They don't love halfway. They don't commit with hesitation. When they care about you, they show it in action, in presence, in the way they stand beside you even when you push them away out of fear or old wounds. Their loyalty is a fire that burns clean. It does not drain you, manipulate you, or tie you down. It strengthens you. It reminds you that devotion can exist without control, that closeness can exist without suffocation, that love can exist without fear. Aries activates your courage in a different way than you activate your own. You have spent decades pushing yourself to grow, to explore, to evolve. But Aries pushes you to rest, to trust, to lean into connection instead of running from it. They teach you that bravery is not just found in risk-taking or adventure. It is found in allowing someone to witness your inner world. Aries doesn't want your perfection. They want your truth. They want your realness. They want the version of you that trembles a little when speaking about your fears. They want the version of you that needs reassurance but rarely asks for it. They want the version of you that doubts your own strength, even when everyone else sees you as unbreakable. And this is why the Sagittarius-Aries connection reaches depths others cannot. Aries doesn't fall in love with the image you present to the world. They fall in love with the humanity you hide behind that image. They aren't drawn to your ability to stay strong. They're drawn to the moments when your strength softens. They aren't impressed by your independence. They're moved by the vulnerability you show when you finally allow someone to walk alongside you. Aries can touch your soul because they treat your vulnerability with reverence, not judgment. But it's important to acknowledge something. Not every Aries can meet you this way. An emotionally immature Aries may compete with you, misunderstand your feelings, or misinterpret your independence as distance. They may react impulsively, withdraw during conflict, or struggle to hold space for your emotional complexity. That version of Aries cannot reach your soul. They can only reach your fire, and sometimes they ignite it in destructive ways. The Aries who touches your soul is different. They have done their work. They have faced their shadows. They have learned to regulate their impulses. They have learned how to stay when it's hard, how to listen when it's uncomfortable, and how to express emotion without weaponizing it. They bring presence instead of chaos, steadiness instead of volatility, devotion instead of intensity alone. This Aries does not try to lead you or follow you. They walk with you. The deeper truth is this. Aries touches the part of you that wants to be met with strength. You have spent a lifetime carrying yourself, building yourself, becoming the woman others rely on. But inside you is a sacred longing to be held by someone who meets you at your level. Not below it, not above it, but beside it. Aries does that. Not by overpowering you but by matching you. Not by rescuing you but by supporting you. Not by controlling you but by trusting you. With Aries, you don't have to explain why you crave freedom. They understand it instinctively. They don't take your independence personally. They don't see your need for space as abandonment. They know that your soul expands through movement, discovery, and self-expression. Instead of trying to cage you, they anchor you. Instead of clipping your wings, they strengthen them. And when you return, because Sagittarius always returns to those who feel like home, Aries welcomes you without resentment. And perhaps the most beautiful part of this connection is the way Aries teaches you to be soft without being small. Their unwavering presence allows you to exhale emotional tension you've held for years. Their honesty helps you confront truths you've avoided. Their courage inspires your own. Their passion reminds you that you are still vibrant, still capable of deep connection, still capable of being met exactly where you are. Aries reaches your soul because they don't fear your fire. They walk into it with open eyes and an open heart. And in doing so, they awaken a version of you that feels loved not for what you give but for who you are. Gate 5. The third sign that can truly touch Sagittarius's soul. Libra. There is a gentle beauty in the way Libra enters a Sagittarius woman's life. A softness that doesn't ask for attention but naturally draws your spirit toward it. While Gemini stirs your mind and Aries strengthens your heart, Libra touches a place even deeper. A place you rarely let anyone see. This is the part of you that longs for harmony, softness, emotional safety, and quiet understanding. The part of you that carries unspoken fears, uncried tears, and the quiet ache of having been strong for far too long. Libra is the third sign capable of reaching this hidden chamber within you, not by matching your fire but by soothing it. What makes Libra so uniquely capable of touching your soul is the way they perceive you. Most people look at a Sagittarius and see adventure, freedom, laughter, strength, and brilliance. Libra sees all of that, yes, but they also see the vulnerability you hide in the corners of your smile. They sense the uncertainty beneath your confidence. They feel the tremor in your spirit when life becomes heavy. They notice the flicker of sadness in your eyes, even when you try to mask it with optimism. Libra carries an intuitive sensitivity to emotional nuance, and this sensitivity allows them to recognize the parts of you that most people overlook. They don't force you to reveal yourself. They simply make you feel safe enough to do so. Libra approaches you with a tenderness that feels like a balm. They don't demand your strength. They don't expect you to entertain them. They don't rely on your fire to fill the empty spaces in their own heart. Instead, they offer balance, peace, and a kind of emotional presence that allows you to slow down. Libra reminds you that you don't always have to be expanding, achieving, moving, or searching. With them, you discover the beauty of stillness. You discover that your soul doesn't always need more. It sometimes simply needs rest. But Libra is far from passive. Their softness is not weakness. It is wisdom. While many rush to respond or react, Libra listens. They listen not just to your words but to your silences, your pauses, your shifts in energy. They don't interrupt your processing. They don't rush you toward resolution. Instead, they give you emotional room to unravel gently. And something extraordinary happens when you are given this space. You relax. Your guard lowers. Your heart exhales. Libra's presence becomes an emotional sanctuary, a place where your spirit can unclench in ways it has forgotten how to. The connection between Sagittarius and Libra is especially powerful in midlife because by your 40s and 50s, you have carried decades of responsibilities, transitions, reinventions, and silent heartaches. You have built resilience through necessity, not choice. And while you may appear youthful, vibrant, and strong to the world, your heart has endured much more than you show. Libra feels this without needing an explanation. They honor it. They don't attempt to fix your emotions or instruct you on how to feel. They simply hold space, something few people ever do for you. Libra also brings something into your life that you rarely give yourself permission to embrace: emotional gentleness. You have spent years being bold, fiery, straightforward, and brave. You navigate life through expansion, action, and exploration. But there is a quiet part of your soul that longs for softness, for the kind of love that doesn't demand you to be extraordinary, but allows you to simply be human. Libra touches you in this softness. They teach you that being delicate doesn't make you weak, that resting doesn't make you regress, that needing comfort doesn't make you less independent. In their presence, you begin to realize that your strength has layers, and one of those layers is the courage to surrender your armor. Another reason Libra can touch your soul is their emotional intelligence. Libra understands the give and take of relationships better than any other sign. They intuitively know how to create harmony without sacrificing honesty. They can express difficult truths without causing harm. They can navigate emotional tension without creating division. For a Sagittarius woman, who is honest but sometimes too direct, this gentle communication style feels both soothing and transformative. With Libra, you learn that truth does not always need to be loud. Sometimes the softest truths are the ones that change everything. Libra also helps you reconnect with parts of yourself you've neglected. Your appreciation for beauty, your desire for emotional equilibrium, your longing for partnership that feels like companionship rather than obligation. They remind you that connection doesn't need to be chaotic to be meaningful. It doesn't need to be fiery to be passionate. It doesn't need to be dramatic to be deep. With Libra, love becomes a quiet revolution, one that unfolds in subtle gestures, shared silences, gentle reassurances, and the kind of intimacy that asks for presence rather than performance. But as with Gemini and Aries, not every Libra is capable of touching your soul. An emotionally immature Libra may avoid conflict to the point of dishonesty. They may become indecisive, evasive, or overly dependent on your fire to guide them. They may mistake peacekeeping for truth-telling and hide their real emotions. That version of Libra cannot meet you at soul level. They can only offer comfort, not transformation. The Libra who reaches your soul is different. They have learned how to hold boundaries with grace. They have learned to express their needs clearly. They have explored their own inner shadows, balanced their own contradictions, and cultivated an emotional strength that complements your own. Their presence does not drain you. It nourishes you. Their steadiness does not confine you. It anchors you. Their kindness does not overwhelm you. It unfolds you. This version of Libra touches the part of you that wants to stop performing. They touch the part that wants to be held quietly after being strong for too long. They touch the part that wants reassurance without having to ask for it. They touch the part that wants love that feels like harmony, not chaos. They touch the part of you that longs to come home. Not to a place but to a feeling. And perhaps most importantly, Libra teaches you how to be gentle with yourself. You have spent a lifetime pushing, striving, evolving, and reinventing. You have built strength from adversity, wisdom from mistakes, and courage from heartbreak. But somewhere along the way you forgot how to soften. You forgot how to nurture your own heart with the same generosity you show others. Libra reminds you. They bring you back to a part of yourself that you've silenced. A part that whispers, I deserve ease. I deserve tenderness. I deserve peace. When a Libra touches your soul, Sagittarius, the world doesn't get louder. It gets quieter. Your heart doesn't race, it settles. Your mind doesn't expand, it calms. Your spirit doesn't burn, it glows. They don't ignite your fire. They harmonize it. They don't challenge your strength. They cradle it. They don't elevate your brilliance. They reflect it softly back to you. In a world that asks you to be everything, strong, wise, vibrant, independent, Libra is the one who whispers, you can rest here. Conclusion, healing closure. Sagittarius, now that you've journeyed through the deeper layers of your own loneliness, your emotional frequency, and the rare connections that can truly touch your soul, something inside you may feel both exposed and illuminated. You have spent so many years being the light for others, carrying wisdom, humor, resilience, and hope like a banner across your chest, while quietly yearning for someone who could meet you in the place where your spirit rests when the world goes quiet. Today, you've been reminded that you were never meant to be understood by everyone. Your soul was designed to resonate only with those who have cultivated enough depth, honesty, and emotional courage to stand beside a woman as expansive and intricate as you. Gemini awakens your mind. Aries strengthens your courage. Libra softens your heart. These three energies don't complete you. You were never incomplete, but they mirror parts of your soul that long to be recognized, honored, and cherished. And the truth is, Sagittarius, you are entering a chapter of life where you no longer have the tolerance or desire for connections that drain you, misunderstand you, or ask you to shrink yourself to fit someone's emotional limitations. You are rising into a version of yourself that demands authenticity, resonance, and mutual growth. A version that refuses to mistake attention for understanding or affection for emotional depth. As you move forward, let this awareness be your compass. Let it guide your choices, your heart, your boundaries, and your willingness to open. And if the message you received here touched a quiet part of your spirit, if it reminded you of your worth, your rare frequency, or your right to be met deeply, allow yourself to gently like, share, or subscribe. Not as a digital gesture, but as a sacred affirmation that your soul is ready. Ready to be seen. Ready to be understood. Ready to be loved in the fullness of who you are. You were never too much. You were simply waiting for those who were enough.